Hey everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and this is my upside down and this is my reading wrap up for March. Quite honestly, this is one of the better reading months. I keep saying that I feel like I've not done a lot, and then when I actually look at what I've done, I'm like, I actually did a lot. So last month I ended up finishing 12 things and reading about 15 in total. And I actually really made good progress. Of course, the sunlight comes out now. But I ended up making really good progress on my reading and on my audiobooks in particular. I went from at the start of the month, I'd listened to like 6 or 7 hours on audio to at the end of the month, I'm now on nearly 60 hours of audio. So it was definitely good for me audiobook wise. But I thought at first that it had been a bit of a disappointing month. And then I realised that yes, there were a few disappointments, but on the whole, it actually was a really good month. I think I was just, because I had 3 sort of DNF / 2 stars back to back last month, I was feeling a little bit drained coming into March, but it ended up working out really well for me. I'm going to do these based off of their rating because some of these books, they kind of follow on from each other but go up and move. So I thought it would be easier rather than go from least to most favourite. If I go by the ratings, I can then clump that little cluster together. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is, as always, my DNFs. I have 1 that I'm not going to continue and 3 that I will. The 3 that I'm going to continue are The Doll Factory by Elizabeth McNeil, which I started for a vlog that I'm not currently going to tell you about. Then I had an arc on NetGalley of Your Blood, My Bones by Kelly Armstrong, can't remember the name, of course, but it'll be up here. And I also am doing another vlog where I'm reading some samples that I've had for a few years now. And with that vlog, I'm just reading through them, and one of them ended up being so good, I downloaded the book immediately on Libby and I've started reading it. So that is When You Call My Name, and I'll be getting to that again this month. The DNF that I am not going to go back to is City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, unfortunately. It started off so good. The introduction of the characters and the world, I was really invested and really like, I am loving all of this. But then as soon as it got to the point where Dara and Naira, I can't even remember her name, but as soon as they left Egypt, it just went so downhill. And as soon as the POV switched to Prince Ali, I got so bored. I don't know why. There was something about that part of the storyline that just went really flat. I didn't like that we had 3 months of these two travelling together. Because by the time they reached Daevabad, they're like, we've been together for months. And I'm like, well, what? I'd rather have actually spent that time with them and watched the relationship grow rather than just suddenly, oh. I know a lot of people have said to stick with it because by the last 100 pages, it's so good. But I should not have to read an entire book for the last 100 pages to finally be where it gets good. It should start good, stay good, and keep my attention throughout. Otherwise, I'm not going to be interested. And that is the reason why with my lowest rated book that I have ever given is the lowest on this list, and that is Hopelessly Hooked, which I only gave 1.5 stars. And as you know, famously, I do not give 1 stars, mostly because if a book is that bad, I stop reading it. But as this was only a 99-page novella, I just pushed through. Oh God, do I wish I hadn't, because it never improved. The characters were bad, the plot was confusing, and nothing really got explained, nothing really happened, and it was very much a case of things were over and done within 3 sentences and nothing really felt complete. And if this had been a full-length novel, it had so much potential, but as it was just trying to do too much in too short a period and fell flat on every single hurdle. And as I said in the review, this is a masterclass on how not to write a novel. Sounds harsh, but honestly, it was so bad, and it just continued my streak of disappointing Peter Pan retellings. Thankfully though, no 2 stars this month. I went straight from 1.5 to 3.5, so it ended up being, for the rest of the month, pretty damn good. Starting off with another self-published indie book, which is Marked by Death by Kate Harper, Male Male Paranormal Romance, featuring a warlock, a guy who is possessed by ghosts, and a very snarky, sarcastic cat familiar called Grimalkin, who end up combining together, and I just really enjoyed this one. It was pretty solid. There were some bits where I was a bit like, I don't really understand. So it's set in the 1960s, but honestly, I don't see what the point of that is, apart from like 2 moments in the book where they're like, oh, we can't be together, it's illegal. I'm like, well, other than that, I don't really see why there was any need for it to be that. And also, just a personal pet peeve, the cover does not scream 1960s to me. That is very modern. And I don't know, I just found it very difficult to imagine it being in that period, and it would have just been fine modern day. I don't really know why they did that. And yeah, I felt like a few things were a bit rushed, and I would have preferred, rather than this be like a 200 page, if this could have been like 300 pages just to flesh those bits out a bit more, it would have been like a perfect storm of good stuff for me. But I definitely enjoyed it, and I want to continue the series. Then we have one of the audiobooks, which was Winter's Orbit by Evelina Maxwell, and I'm actually not going to talk about this one too much in this because it's going to be in a vlog that I'll be talking through soon. And so all I will say is I gave it 3.5 stars, and I had some things that I really, really liked and some things that I absolutely hated about it, but you'll find out more in a future vlog. Then was Black Butler Volume 2 by Yana Taboso. I really loved how this introduced some of my favourite characters. Undertaker comes into it, Grell comes into it, and I love how they incorporate the Jack the Ripper storyline into this. However, I do feel that it was just a bit flat, and there were a lot of pages where there was just sort of nothing really happening, and so that kind of lowered it for me. So even though it did introduce a few of my favourite characters, it's not until later on that those characters really shine, and so it just wasn't my favourite overall. And certainly the first few volumes of Black Butler for me always rate a bit lower. It's after about 4 or 5 that they really start to kick in and get good for me, but I do still love this series. And then the only one of the Raven Cycle books that didn't make it into the 4-star and above category was the novella Opal. I literally read this last night. It's only an hour long on audio, and it only took me an hour. Things that I absolutely loved about it: I love Opal as a character. I loved seeing that kind of parental side of Ronan. I loved the flashes of Ronan that we got, and I loved a lot of like her worldview and how she was looking at everything that was happening. However, I seem to have a love-hate relationship with Steve Varta's writing, because on one hand, I absolutely love how beautiful she writes. I love her dialogue. I love how she does descriptions, but her plots are pretty bad. And she gets so lost in the writing that she loses all sense of the plot. And honestly, there was like this one bit with this cloud lady, and I still do not understand what was going on. And even with the Raven Boys, there were so many moments where I just had no clue what was actually happening, or trying to understand what things were. And it's so annoying, because if it wasn't for that, these would be absolute 5-star across the board. But her writing just gets so confusing at times. It's hard to follow because it goes so metaphorical and so lyrical that I just get lost. But I did love all of the perspectives. However, one of the biggest glaring issues I had is there was a moment where she was looking in on a sexual moment between people, and it was describing how, she doesn't have lust installed in her, therefore she didn't really think about it when she watched. And I'm like, very uncomfortable about, that perspective being seen through a child's eyes. I just felt that was icky and not necessary, and it wasn't needed to be done. I don't know. It made me very uncomfortable. So yeah, that one only got 3.5 because, like I said, bits that I loved, and then there was just some really weird bits, and one bit in particular where I was just like, this is really inappropriate. I don't see why she needed to write that. But it has given a couple of little nods to what's going to come in the next trilogy, which I will be starting today with Call Down the Hawks. So Then we go into our 4 stars, and starting off with Shanghai Immortal. Why did I put this one off? Because I ended up really enjoying it. There were a few moments where I was a bit like, things needed a bit more explaining and a little bit more fleshing out. I'm finding this seems to be an issue with so many books recently. Just things only feel half explained and worlds are only half built. And while that's not really a big issue, I'm just noticing it more and more in certainly debuts. I just feel like they all need an extra round of edits just to add a little bit more depth to them. But I feel like authors maybe are on such tight deadlines these days that they're just kind of releasing the books when maybe in the past they would have taken a bit more time. And by they, I mean the publishers. But again, this one just, I really enjoyed a lot of moments in it, but then there were just some parts where I was just like, okay, was that really necessary, or could that not have been explained in a different way? But overall, I did really like the characters in this. I'm kind of confused with one of the characters in this, the main guy, what's his name? I mean, I still find it hilarious that her adoptive father's name is Big Wang. That is the immature Brit in me. I'm just like, Every time I hear Big Wang, I just think of yeah. But yeah, the main love interest, I can't tell you if he's tall, if he's handsome, if he's young, if he's old. I can't tell you any of those things because it's so vague. But I did like how he was as a person. And the other thing that I've seen a lot of people complain about is Lady Jing's attitude in this. But I was like, do you know what? And they're like, oh, she's 100 years old. She should act a bit more mature. And it's like, she's 100 years old immortal around people who are thousands of years old who are as immature as her. If she was a human, she would probably barely be out of her teens. So yeah, she's not going to be mature. She's going to act a bit more impulsively and a little bit more childishly because in their eyes, she is a child. And you see it, they treat her, the immortals treat her like she is still a child. So how do you expect her to be more mature when nobody expects it of her and she's not been taught differently? So I did get annoyed at some of the reviews on this because I'm like, you're marking it down for things that literally make sense. Make that make sense. But I did end up really enjoying this and I gave it 4 stars and I will continue the series. Next up, we go into the Raven Cycle series. As you know, this has kind of taken over, become an obsession of mine. But the lowest rated of these that I gave was The Dream Thieves, which is book 2. For this one, I really hated Kavinsky as a character. And I also really didn't like, it's the one thing I don't like about the narration was just the voice that Will Patton gave Kavinsky sounded like a 1940s gangster that was in his 70s, not a teenage boy. I don't know, it just felt weird. I also felt like some of the characters that were being introduced, it just was in a really weird way and things felt a bit messy. And even though this was the book where I started to really like Blue and Gansey as characters, I still felt that there was just something missing overall in this book. But that's fine because the rest of the series and the next category were the 4.5 stars. So my favourite in the series ended up being book 3. I see why it's most people's favourite in the series because it just brought in some really lovable side characters. It made really good advances with the plot. I think it was the least confusing of all of the books. Like things actually made sense and were well explained and the processes were broken down so it was easier to follow. I loved the building relationships between various characters. There was so much that I loved about the third book. And we got a little bit more from the Grey Man and the Women of 300 Foxway. And honestly, by the end of the series, I was way more invested in those characters and that storyline than I was with the Raven Boys themselves. And Ronan, that was the book that solidified Ronan as an all-time favourite character for me. I just love it. And I love his sibling energy with Blue. It was so good. But in The Dream Thieves, the finale of the Raven Cycle, some of it got a little bit lost again because I felt she tried to do so much in the finale and tried to like make it so dramatic that again, she kind of got lost in her own writing a bit and lost the flow. Things were not very well explained again. And also by the end, it kind of got to a point where I just didn't care about Cabeswater anymore. And I just didn't care about the king. I've forgotten his name. Wow. It's been there this whole week. But I just didn't care. And I was way more invested in a character that came into the Dream Thieves. And I was like, well, what's going to happen with her? And I just felt like the ending left so many things kind of unanswered. And I know it's supposed to be more of an open ending, but at the same time I'm like, there's such thing as being too open. The one thing again that I will say that I've disagreed with some of the commentary, a lot of people have complained about Noah in particular and what happens with his storyline. I'm not going to spoil anything here, but I will say that I actually thought it was really well done and it made sense to me what happened, and I fully understand why she did that, and I thought it was really well done, and I was on board with that. I hated it, but I understood it, and I was like, I see what she was going for here, which is really weird because some of the metaphysical stuff, I was lost. Yet that, I knew exactly what she was doing and what she was going for, and I thought it worked really, really well. Carrying on with the 4.5 stars, we next have Queer Power by Dom and Ink. This is icons and activists in the queer world, as well as allies. I really liked it. It was pretty solid. I felt like I would have loved way more historical icons, because it does mention 2, but I just would have liked maybe 4 or 5 and have a few more older, like a little bit more of the older generation. Because most of these people I would say are 40 and under. Not all, but most. But I would have liked to have known about the ones from 100 years ago a little bit more. So while it was fantastic, it just wasn't perfection for me. And I would love it if they did like a volume 2 where it's like maybe the history of queer power or something like that. That would just be so, so good. We then had Covenant by Lysandra, can't remember the surname, but Vuong? Seems to ring a bell. But this one is a webtoon that is now being printed as a graphic novel. Honestly, I was immediately invested in this. I've now gone onto the webtoon and I've been reading it and I'm so in on it. I love it. And it's queer. It's got sort of demons. It's got, you know, a reluctant hero. It's got reluctant allies. Just everything that I love in one single book. So I was definitely, and it's like you've got this group of, they're kind of like religious warriors, they're priests, but they also fight demons. And there's another sect that are like suspicious of them and thinking that they're being controlled by the demons rather than hunting them. And there's like a conflict there. And then we have a new character introduced who's just kind of, I'm not sure if he's like the Antichrist or there's something with him where he's got demon blood or something, but he's a reluctant hero. I loved it so much, and I loved all of the characters. Samson is just kind of a new big crush on for me, and it was so good. I loved it. But again, because it was the first one, it was setting stuff up, I felt there could have been a little bit more development. Some places it felt a bit rushed, other places it felt a bit too slow, which is why it wasn't quite a 5-star, but the rest of the series, like when it comes to volume 2, they will be. And then finally, the one that was the closest to 5 stars was A Sign of Affection, volume 1. This is a deaf rep romance manga, and honestly, it was freaking adorable. The artwork is some of the most beautiful artwork I have ever seen in any manga. It is so beautiful, so pretty. I thought it was gorgeous, and it added that kind of whimsy to the storyline for me. However, I will say there were a few things that really bugged me, like the fact that because she's disabled and deaf, she's almost infantilized by people, which really annoyed me. Her own mother, she said she was going out and her mum was like, it's 8:30 p.m, where do you think you're going? And be back by your curfew of 10. I'm like, this is a fully grown adult at university with a curfew just because she's deaf. And I didn't like that very much. And I also felt like it took a bit too long to explain certain things in this. Like she was saying that she's completely deaf yet had hearing aids. And it took almost half the book before they finally explained, oh, she can, with the hearing aid, she can't understand separate sounds and recognize individual sounds, but she can hear something, so she'll be aware that there's people around her and stuff. But things like when a car approaches, she can't disattain that. She can't differentiate between that and someone talking. And there were just some questions where it was like, well, why are these things like this? And why is she acting like this? That I just felt took far too long to explain. And had that been put in like the first few pages, it would have made way more sense and actually made the book flow a little better. So yeah, there was a slight flow issue with this, but other than that, it was so good, and I definitely want to continue this. I've got a feeling it's going to become an all-time favourite. So there you have it. Weirdly, this time of year is normally when I start to really slow down and slump. But touch wood, right now it seems, actually that's lanyard, that's wood. Touch wood, it seems like I'm on a bit of a roll and I seem to actually be quite far ahead of myself at the minute. I think my manga reading I'm now on level because I was quite far ahead last month, but this month I've only read 3 or 4. But my novels, I've gone from being just about on target to about 6 ahead now. And I read way more novels this month than I thought I was going to. So, you know, a lot of them were quite short because obviously they were in 200 and 100 pages. But I read some actual novels and I did some physical reading and I did some audiobooks. And I'm just really, really happy with that. So, yay me. Anyway, I'm going to go. Let me know in the comments what your favourite books of the month were. I obviously have The Raven Cycle. It's an obsession at this point. And like I said, it's now the 1st of April as I record this. I will be starting Call Down the Hawk tonight. I will be starting. Because it's just so damn good. And it's Ronan-centric. It's sort of centred on Ronan and his brothers. So I'm really excited for that. And I just can't wait. And yeah. So yeah, let me know what you got up to and how your reading went, and I will see you on the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content, and I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe, and until next time.